Hey everyone, this is Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. Sher and I are back to do a third episode in a series that we are focusing on just some end of the year thoughts for 2024 and heading into 2025. Sher, the last few weeks, the first week we looked at just a time of reflection over this last year or few years where we've been and maybe where we want to go. And then last week, we looked at the topic of releasing. What are some things that we would like to close out the year with in the form of releasing? And then today, we are going to look at the topic of grief and look at, where are you at in any type of journey that you're on with grieving, or maybe there's something that you've been avoiding because it does come with grief. And so we're just going to have a little discussion here today, Sher, about where we're at in our grief process and maybe, what are we currently feeling some grief over?
Grief feels like such a mystery. I think for me and my journey, it has been so hard to really wrap my hands around it and be able to really enter it. And then it kind of comes and goes at will. I'll be in a place where I am kind of feeling some grief and sadness and anger and sorrow. And then it'll be kind of gone for a while. And then it will come back. And so I've told other people too, like grief is something we don't really manage. It kind of comes and goes as in a kind of a mystery kind of a way that we don't control, but if we can welcome it and enter when it comes and even facilitate, I think it's helpful. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think 2024 has been the year of grieving for me more than any other point in my life. I really was not able to get in touch with my grief, but this year I've felt a lot of grief. And I think there have been a few things that have enabled me to go there. One has been just a writing project that I have worked on that I wasn't planning for it to bring up a lot of grief, but it did. It helped, even though I was writing fiction, it really helped connect me to a lot of grief in my own story and brought so many good tears, beautiful tears, and deep feelings of sadness that I have wanted to feel, and so grateful for that. But I think one of the things that I'm grieving kind of as we are closing out the year is the whole concept of the mother wounds and just the ways that the wounds that I experienced in my relationship with my mom have caused a lot of pain for me, caused a lot of confusion. It's been really hard for me even to wrap my mind around what does it mean and how was I really hurt? And so, yeah, just kind of, there's a lot swirling around for me in that whole avenue of the mother wounds.
Mm-hmm. I'm aware that maybe there might be someone who, like, why do we need to talk about grief? It just feels like such a downer,
Yeah.
But the truth is, our body holds loss, and the way we release that is to allow ourselves to move into the sadness, kind of face it, feel it, and then release it to free it. And why would we do that? Because it actually opens up more space for other things besides those painful emotions. And so as you're talking about this last year, and I've been a witness to your deep grief, Sher, over the mother wound and how you've consistently shown up and say, I don't want to bury this. Like, I want to bring it into the light with people who understand, who can hold it. And I will say, not judge it,
Yep.
not condemn it, right? Because we live in a society that has a hard time understanding why somebody would set boundaries with a parent or disconnect from a parent.
Right.
And I I'm protective over you in that way because share the level of hurt and harm in your stories with no true repair. You've had to do that for your own well-being.
Yeah.
Like, I know you. I know that when there can be repair and restoration, you would choose that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
have, yeah,
and
and have tried to move toward that. And I think I actually want to even name that, Kandace, that I think for our listeners to even hear me say the words that I have had an estranged relationship with my mom for 30 years, meaning I really have not been in relationship with her, though the invitation has been there and the desire has been there in a true repair kind of a way. It hasn't happened all through these years. And you mentioned the deep sadness, and I want to also just name the anger that also can be such a part of grief. We think of grief as being sadness, but
yeah.
anger often is a really big emotion that shows up in this process of grieving as well. And as we name truth and enter the realm of some of the deep wounds, sometimes there's a lot of anger that comes up. And so this combination of anger and sadness, though, and just the cost that having this, we call it an estranged relationship, and in some ways, it's almost like a non-relationship. It's like the death of a person who's actually still alive, and that there has just been so much hurt in that for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a complicated grief, in that, a lot of times when we think of loss and sorrow and grief, we immediately go towards someone who has passed away, which is a big part of a lot of people's road grief journey.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's this unique kind of a different type of sorrow when that person is still living, but the relationship is dead, basically.
Yeah.
And I want to just say that I honor your boundaries and like even the invitation and how you've had to take a lot of time in this space
Yep.
to process and to go slow because your body has held so much for so many years in this area of the mother wound.
Yeah. And how it is just so confusing. Still, I feel like there are times I still talk about aspects and that I still have some level of confusion around, my stories of harm and trauma. And that, it's a process that just has taken me a lot of time to go
Yeah.
through, and I'm still in it, and I'm okay with still being in it.
Yeah. And I want to say this too. I've witnessed in groups when you have been honest and transparent about some of these questions and confusion. I've witnessed maybe someone ask you a question or maybe say, I'm really seeing this. And I literally have seen you kind of light up um, in a way that has helped you see more the truth about who that little girl was and what you truly are worthy of.
Yeah.
And that's been a beautiful thing to witness, to see you receive that type of love and care.
Yeah. And the goodness of having another person's eyes, as we have said so many times on the podcast. But we cannot see what we cannot see.
Right.
And that's why the voice of another person, the eyes and the care of another person, just so very, very meaningful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was talking to a therapist friend the other day, and we were talking about how people that kind of get stuck on their healing journey. And she said something to me that just felt so kind, that when you are stuck, or I mean, I actually don't think at the deepest level people want to be stuck.
Yeah.
She had made this comment about how I am going to honor wherever you're at in your journey and hold space, even in this stuckness.
Mm.
And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, how kind, right?
Mm.
Because I do think people tend to know that they do feel stuck and they don't want to be stuck.
And when you look at our journey through the IFS lens, internal family systems, sometimes we have parts who are very resistant toward stepping toward these wounds or being able to hear truth even. And so the best thing that we can do is just allow the slowness of the journey. And sometimes that looks like being stuck. Sometimes it just means one of my parts or some of my parts need more help, more safety, more care until they're able to move through the resistance. And when we can do that, then we can see movement that actually is healing and moves us to a place where we have more capacity for love rather than being stopped up by fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to say, and that when our parts feel safe and can trust, that's huge in being able to bring more things into the light.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just say, like, I'm right there in my own story right now, coming back to some stories that are just really hard and wanting to go there again because I recognize there's some stuckness. There are some ways that this is still affecting me, and I have had a lot of resistance. And can I move toward it? There's going to be a lot more grief, I think, that is going to come up as a result of this. And I feel good about that. I feel good about moving toward that. So how about you, Kandace? Where?
But let's just keep talking about you.
Yeah. I know. We could. I know we could.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
where do you feel like you are in your grief journey as we're kind of coming to the end of the year here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you know, the loss of my dad in 2018 is one of the hardest grief journeys I've ever been on.
Yeah.
But and I do still miss him, and I can have moments where I feel the ache.
Yeah.
But I really have just really in a place of gratitude and still learning from him. Um, learning that he has given me this legacy of being able to show up with others with like deep, genuine love, no matter where they're at on their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we are having some changes in our family that are sad to me.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I also can hold that love, as I've been more connected to myself and I love myself more and more, like being able to freely feel that and give it as other people are also grieving has been sweet to me.
Oh.
Yeah. And so definitely aware that there's changes coming and are happening in our family. And I have moments where I'm shedding tears over that.
Yeah, and you just mentioned something that I wonder if we can just linger here for a little bit, and that is when we share grief with another person. And can you put a little bit more framework around that, or just describe a little bit more what you're thinking or sensing when you say that?
Well, I think that so so as children, we have things that happen that are deeply sad and wrong and unjust when you've had complex childhood trauma.
Good.
But we don't have the language or the understanding of what grief is, what purpose it serves, and how that looks in having someone be with you in it. Okay, so we learn at a young age to suppress and to push down those hard, sad, and sometimes even what people have said, negative feelings.
Yeah.
Right. But then sometimes what happens is, and this is common for a lot of people's stories, they'll still encounter things of loss, but they can really stuff it down and let it be suppressed. But a lot of people say, until this happened, at some point it catches up with you and you realize that you can no longer keep holding inside what is desperately trying to get out. And that happened for me with my dad's death. And so the way I used to sit with people in their grief, it was sincere, and I could recognize the loss and the sadness. But today, I don't have to try to be with people in their grief. It's like as soon as someone invites me into their space of loss and sorrow, it's just very authentic and natural for my body to join them there.
Here.
And I work in hospice, right? So I volunteer in hospice. So I'm in these spaces quite a bit.
Story work and hospice and me.
And
And me, because you have been with me in my grief many times. And I will just say that it makes a profound difference when we're going through these times. And sometimes we have almost a compulsion to isolate. But when we don't, and when we're able to open up with another person who is comfortable being with us in this space, the connection, the care, the welcome. That's the word I'm looking for. The welcome that even when I'm in this place of deep sadness or fierce anger, I'm welcome to be there in your presence, with you, there with me. And that matters. That has mattered to me in huge ways.
yeah, welcome and wanted, right? I read this thing the other day, and I'm just gonna say this. So there was a time that I was told I was welcomed in a certain place. I knew I may be welcomed, at least verbally. I'm not experiencing truly being wanted here. And I will say, we know, like if we're listening to our bodies, we actually know when someone wants to be with us. And yes, Sher, I want to be with you in all your feelings and emotions and your grief. And I know you want to be with me. I feel it. I know it. I don't feel like a burden anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not at all. Not at all. You're welcome. And
that was so healing to me.
Yeah. 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 So this topic of grief, which is always difficult to go to this place, but good. And you and I are experiencing the goodness of being held and contained when we are in these really painful places. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very I just want to say I'm trying to think of the word that can capture it. Truly is very profound and life-giving to know, even if you just have a handful of people who will surround you and uphold you and just, I don't know, be with you in a way that maybe you've never experienced before. And we both have that now, not just with one another, but with other women.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a gift. And I will say, even if you have one,
Yes. Yes.
because it opens the way for love. And I think I just keep coming back to this so much, that this is what the healing journey does. It opens up the pathway for us to give and receive love from a full heart.
Yeah.
And that is what, and grieving is a part of that process.
Oh, yes. Very much so. A very significant part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to ask our listeners, what are you grieving as you see 2024 come to an end? What are some things maybe that you're noticing that you're holding, some places of deep sadness or anger or loss or pain? And can you allow yourself to go a little deeper into those emotions and maybe open up with someone who can hold you there and contain your story? Because this is what is so important.
Thank you, friend, for holding that space for me. And
Likewise.
I look forward to coming back next week and talk about dreams.
Dreams. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Love you, friend.
Love you too.